Alright lads, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the T-72M1. A tank so underused in War Thunder, its default skin may as well come with cobwebs and cosmoline. It's got all the charm of a Soviet washing machine, and it handles like one too. Do you like trying to retreat? Well, niet comrade, that is not allowed. But the gun sends hate mail downrange at over Mach 1, and the armor was built for brain dead players. In fact, if you park this thing hold down, it becomes Battle Rating 9.3's premier tax collector, screwing enemy players far harder than the IRS could ever imagine. I guess I technically did lie in the intro, because today we're actually taking a look at 4 tanks, I guess, technically, as the T-72A and or the M1 is actually present in several major tech trees. The OG is present in the Soviet tech tree, and there are 3 export variants added to the game in the German, Italian and Swedish tech trees. All 4 of these vehicles sit at Battle Rating 9.3, which is the main reason for these vehicles' current dominance. Back when all of the major grinding premiums were Battle Rating 10.3, the T-72M used to get bullied for a variety of reasons, mainly it being rather sluggish compared to those vehicles, but Gaijin recently changed the battle rating of the sub-top tier grinders to battle rating 10.7 now, meaning that you never see them in the matchmaker. This means the 2 most popular battle rating lineups in War Thunder at the minute, that is 10.7 and 11.7/12, well, we're basically excluded from that, so we only really ever see our current battle rating and some down tiers. This has created a very fun, non-sweaty meta at battle rating 9.3 that I've been absolutely loving playing. 9.3 America, 9.3 Germany, 9.3 Soviets, 9.3 Chinese, 9.3 Sweden, 9.3 France as well actually, all fantastic lineups. But the T-72, it does add some spice to them, and as this vehicle is present in 4 of those, it can be a real boost to your lineup. All 4 of these nations also have incredibly strong 9.3 lineups, with the Soviet and Swedish lineups being the 2 weak ones in my opinion. But the Italian and German 9.3 lineups are absolutely cracked at the minute. And again, remember, you're never really going to see harsh up tiers. But what exactly is the T-72M1? Well, put simply, it's an export variant of the T-72A that we already have in the Soviet tech tree, coming with the same deadly 125mm cannon, as well as the equally scary frontal armour scheme. While it doesn't have any fancy thermal images or anything that makes this tank particularly flashy in game, the sheer resilience and consistency of this tank to bounce incoming shells is what makes it battle rating 9.3's biggest bully. So let's start with one of the tank's biggest strengths, that classic dose of good old Soviet firepower. Every variant of the T-72M1 is armed with the 125mm 2A46 smoothbore cannon. And for battle rating 9.3, it's frankly overkill. Only a handful of the 105mm armed Leopards with DM33 can really claim to match that firepower. Of course, the T-72 does come with its signature autoloader, which means no matter how hungover your crew members are, your reload is always going to be a consistent 7.1 seconds. Just bear in mind that is a little bit slower than compared to like most NATO vehicles which have 6.7 seconds with an ace crew, but it's never really been a deal breaker for me. Between the fantastic armor protection that buys you quite a lot of time, and the gun's ability to one-shot most targets, you really actually need to panic fire in this vehicle. On the fire control side, things are simple but effective. You've got a 2-point gun stabilizer, so firing on the move isn't a lottery, as well as a laser rangefinder to make long-range engagements pretty painless. The only real drawback in my opinion is the fixed 8x zoom, which makes close quarter fighting pretty awkward. Though to be honest though, going into third person view does basically negate this. Now we come on to thermals, or rather lack of them. Honestly, it's not really the end of the world at battle rating 9.3. Most vehicles are only really getting access to the very grainy first gen like 720p thermals at this battle rating, and it's kind of just a fuzzy blob simulator. With this tank being built for primarily close to medium range fighting, you don't really need thermals to be honest, as long as you're not using DLSS and everything's a massive blur. You do also get the basic infrared night vision system, but it's more of a liability than a feature because it says shoot me if you're playing in night battles and you have your big spotlight on. But while the Warsaw Pact did fall behind the West in terms of sensor performance, they have more than made up for it in munitions. When you first unlock any of the T-72s, they will give you 2 rounds for stock. This is the free BK-12M Heat of Fest round, with a very reliable 440mm of penetration, as well as the 30F26 high explosive shell, infamous for its ability to overpressure MBTs if you land a hit on the turret roof, or between the turret and the upper hull armour. Later on, you can unlock up to 3 Sabre rounds, with the starter 3BM9 with 320mm of pen, the 3BM15 with 440mm of pen, and finally your go-to round is the 3BM22 with 425mm of penetration. While the 3BM15 is technically stronger against flatter armour, having about 15mm more penetration, I find that the 3BM22 shines against angled armour, making it for me my go-to round. It just goes through angled armour very easily, whereas the 3BM15 does struggle. That being said though boys, don't sleep on the high explosive shell. Sure enough it is slower, but if you smack it into the driver's port or a place with a thin armour, it's going to happily erase any tank that thought they were safe. I have a particular good memories of clapping French tanks with this vehicle. You know the French tanks where they've got massive commander's cupolas, you can just hit them while they think they're behind cover and instantly send them back to the hangar. But in short, the T-72M1 may not win any awards for fancy gadgets or unique features when it comes to in-game performance. When it comes down to the things that matter, like sheer firepower, it's a cold, calculated sledgehammer at batter rating 9.3. Next up, we have the survivability, and this is where the old Soviet slugger really shows its teeth. I'm fairly certain that the T-72s we get in War Thunder are modelled after the mid-80s upgrade. This came about after the 1982 Lebanon War, where the Soviets had a bit of a wake-up call. The Israeli M111 Sabre round could punch straight through the T-72's upper frontal plate. How did the Soviets fix this? Well, they welded a high hardness steel plate onto the upper glacis. Now the clever bit here is that this plate would often crack when struck, but in doing so, it absorbs a huge portion of the incoming energy. Think of it like a ceramic bulletproof vest where it essentially gets hit, cracks, and basically it's useless then, but at least it's taken the impact. Now I remember reading this somewhere, but I cannot for the life of me find any source for it. I believe it was called like the Reflections program or something. So do leave a comment if you do know what I'm talking about or whether I'm talking crap, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure they did weld a steel plate on top of the armour. In game though, this extra armour buys you a surprising amount of breathing room against common threats of this batter rating like the American M735 or Germany's DM23, and you're largely safe from a straight on fight. It doesn't make you invincible though, the driver's port is still a giant glowing weak spot and any competent player will happily thread a shot through it, but where this armour really shines is in its close quarters slugfest fighting, when players panic, rush their shots, or even just underestimate you. The T-72M1 can just shrug off hits that should have sent you back to the hangar. I've lost count how many times this armour has saved my bacon. It's one of those tanks where people just kind of panic when they see you rolling around a corner. They kind of like overthink it and end up shooting like at your thick turret armour for some reason. Happens surprisingly a lot. Of course though, this is still a T-72. If you take a hit to the side of the vehicle, your crew is taking a free trip into low Earth orbit, but thanks to the low silhouette, tough frontal armour, and that hard-hitting 125mm gun, the T-72M1 is a terrifying close-range brawler. It's not indestructible, but it doesn't need to be. When it comes to the mobility, the T-72M1 is about as subtle as a freight train and about as nimble as a larder on ice. In realistic battles, it'll do about 60 km/h going forwards, which sounds decent on paper, but in practice you'll feel like you're dragging the entire Warsaw Pact behind you. The real comedy begins though when you try to reverse, a mighty 4 km/h. Now, it's not all bad. With 780 horsepower pushing 41.5 tons, you get a power to weight ratio that's decent enough, 18.8 horsepower per ton. It's enough to get you moving, but don't expect to be winning any cross-country races. As we've been discussing, this tank isn't a scalpel, it's a rolling sledgehammer. The main issue is of course the reverse gear. I imagine the guy in charge of designing the Soviet gear ratios took the 5-year plan a little too literally, as if you poke around a corner and it starts to go bad, you're not retreating, you're respawning. But honestly, that's just part of the charm of playing the Soviets. So, what's the verdict on the T-72M1? Well, it's exactly what you'd expect from a Soviet MBT at this tier. A mixed bag of brilliance and suffering, with just enough of both to keep things interesting. On the firepower side, it's an absolute sledgehammer, fantastic saber rounds, a cheeky high explosive option, and a steady autoload that delivers consistent punishment. The armour, surprisingly reliable, especially considering you don't get many up tiers. And then there's the mobility. Going forwards it's acceptable, but the reverse gear is more of a suggestion than a functioning mechanism. But that's just the charm of the T72 series. It doesn't try to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be. It's an honest, no-nonsense brawler, strong armour, hard-hitting gun, enough mobility to get the job done if you position smartly. If you treat this tank right though lads, it is going to be your new best friend at battle rating 9.3. It adds a massive twist of playstyle for the strongest nation, so Germany and Italy. They both really have fast, lightly armoured NATO vehicles like the Leopard 1A5s and stuff like that. So having a T72, it allows you to brawl on like the more close quarters urban maps that you have in War Thunder now. So it gives you a whole other flavour of play. 9.3 Italy for me at the minute is absolutely fantastic. You've got like really good level up. You've got like the Centauros for speed, the OF40s for speed, flexibility as well, Leopard 1A5 flexible, and you've got the T72 M1 if you really need to get in people's faces. Anyway lads, thank you very much for watching the video. If you'd like to support me, please consider leaving a like or a comment. You can also subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see future videos. Finally, if you really love the video, consider becoming a channel member like these lovely lads. As always, a massive thank you to Lola Alphonse, Tans, Deboa LX, Schlunty, Van Halen, Diogenes, Pumpin, Econ, and Minami Productions. Thanks again for making it all the way to the end of the videos lads. If you did, leave a comment saying Sputnik